So you've always wanted to play the guitar and maybe thought it's just too complicated for you, or you've been intimidated by it, or maybe you've tried to play the guitar before but feel like you failed and just didn't get the results you wanted to. Well, I'm here to tell you today that you can play the guitar, and I'm going to share some of the most critical areas of getting started right. That way you can get some little wins under your belt and have success playing the guitar. One of the most important parts of that is learning how to play music right away so you have fun actually playing the guitar. So the goal of this little video is going to be to play part of the song Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. That's going to be our goal. First off, I just want to go through a few of the little accessories you might need or probably going to need as you start learning the guitar. And if you have like a guitar starter pack, these are some accessories that are probably included in there for you. The first thing are just picks. And if you don't know what picks to use, I always recommend going with just a regular teardrop shaped medium thickness pick to start playing the guitar. You can choose what you like from there as you get more familiar with what's available, but that's a really great place to start. Another thing is you probably have some extra strings that came with the guitar, and if you don't have extra strings, I'd really recommend running out to the music store and getting an extra set just in case you break a string, so you don't have to stop practicing for the day and run out to the music store then. Another thing you're going to want to make sure that you have is just a strap for your guitar, and there's a very good reason for this. One of the biggest trouble spots for starting to play the guitar is making clean chords, and if you elevate the guitar a little bit either with a strap or a footstool, that's going to put the neck in a better position to actually play those chords very cleanly. So think about that if you don't already have one. The last little thing that you might need is just an electronic tuner, and it doesn't matter what type it is, it doesn't have to be expensive, but getting your guitar in tune is really the first step to sounding good, and that's what we'll go over right now. So the first step to getting your guitar in tune is to just memorize the names of the open strings, and the lowest, thickest string down here is just an E, A, D, G, B, and E, and it may take you a while to memorize the names of those open strings. So that's super important, so make that part of your daily practice. Just say it over and over again. E, A, D, G, B, and E. And you can come up with your own silly little sayings to memorize the names of the strings. Eat all day, go to bed early, or anything else that you like. To get your guitar in tune, there is a simple two-step process that you can follow, and I'm going to use my phone to tune my guitar this time. Step number one is to match the string name to what it should be. So this should be an E. What if it was a little bit lower? It'd be a D, just go in alphabetical order. Get it to the right string name. So D and then E. It's an E now, but the needle is off to the right. That means it's a little sharp. So step one, get the note to the correct name, which we've done. Step two is to fine tune it to where the needle is right in the middle. There you go. All you have to do is make sure you're turning the right key, tuning key. So that's one thing you want to start off. Okay, am I turning the right tuning key? Because that's the way a lot of people break strings. They're tuning the wrong one. They end up going too high and popping it. So that two-step process, just match the name of the string. That's why it's so important to memorize the names of the open strings. So E, and then dial it in to where it's right in the middle. Let's do another one. Let's do a D string. Let's pretend, or sorry, the A string. Let's pretend that that's a little bit low. And it says a G sharp right here. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's the natural musical alphabet. G. When you come up a little bit to an A, back around to the beginning. And it's a little bit low, so step one is good. We've got the A. Now, it's a little bit off to the left, the needle there, so we need to keep coming up until it's right in tune. So just repeat that process for each of the open strings, get it to the right note, and then fine tune it. And then you may be surprised by the time you finish tuning your guitar, you go to play it and it sounds out of tune again. That's because when you put more or less tension on one string, the other strings can go off. So I always recommend going through and tuning your guitar twice. And do this at the beginning of each practice session. All right, the first area of playing the guitar that a lot of people struggle with is just basic strumming technique. So I'm going to give you some very important tips for getting this down. And you can use a pick, you can use your fingers, it doesn't matter what you're doing to strum. The important thing is mainly to relax. And a good place to start is to just put a pick on your index finger and then come down on it as naturally as you can with your thumb. If you're not using a pick, you can still use that same technique. But when I say relax, I mean don't lock your wrist and don't just strum from your elbow, and don't get a death grip on the pick. It's gonna be really tough to get through the strings if you do that. Relax, Really loose grip on the pick, that way it can just kind of glide through the strings. And you want to relax and use your wrist too and get this nice rotational movement here, almost like a flicking motion. And those little tips for strumming, if you really apply them, can be very helpful. So really relax grip on the pick, let it glide through the strings and kind of give rotational movement with your arm. And then if you want to, you can grip the pick with 2 fingers instead of 1 if you need a little extra control, like if it's flying out of your hands. And then on your upstrokes too, you don't have to dig a lot of the pick into the strings with your upstrokes. If you do, that can be kind of hard to get through the strings. And for your upstrokes, you don't have to hit all 6 strings. Just remember that. Keep those tips in mind as you start developing your strumming technique. And as you go through all these tips, make sure you're practicing at least 20 to 30 minutes a day, 4 to 6 times a week. So that consistent practice is really going to help you program in all of these things. All right, let's get into making some clean chords, and this is kind of the first big hurdle that a lot of guitar players come up against. That's a little bit frustrating. So I have 2 chords for you. One is an open simple G chord, kind of a partial G chord, and the other one is an open E minor chord. And we're going to use these 2 simple chords to really learn some important things about chording technique that'll make your life a lot easier as you learn more chords in the future. First off, get your guitar set up by a professional to play as easily as possible. That means the strings will be a little bit easier to push down, be a lot less frustrating for you. Second, and I kind of already mentioned this, is elevate the guitar with either a strap or a footstool to put it in a little bit better position for making these chords. Okay, our first chord is just going to be the top 3 strings, or the highest, skinniest 3 strings of the guitar. Those are the only strings we'll be using for this. You can also throw the 4th one in there if you want to. You're going to play the open G and B strings, so you don't need to fret those at all. And then you can use your 3rd or 4th finger to play the 3rd fret of the high E string. And when you do this, when you fret a note, make sure to come right behind the fret, not toward the back of it. That can create some buzzing. Right behind the fret, right on the very tip of your finger. Make sure to bring your elbow in. Make sure it's not out here. That can create some problems. And those are the main things for creating clean chords. It really is. Try not to mute the neighboring string here, that B string. But let me run through those tips again. Right behind the fret, right on the very tip of your finger. To help with that, elevate the guitar a little bit and bring your elbow in. And make sure not to mute the neighboring strings. And for this open G chord, you can hit just the top 3 strings, the highest 3 strings, or 4 strings. You don't want to hit the low E or A strings for this chord. The second chord is an E minor chord, and really the same technique tips apply here, but you're going to have to fret 2 notes. I use my 2nd and 3rd fingers for this, and you can strum all 6 strings for this chord. First off, 3rd finger, 2nd fret of the D string, again right behind the fret. Try to make sure you come down on the very tip of your finger, elbow in so you can get a good angle of attack on that, and you don't want to mute that G string, but if you do bring your elbow in and don't kink your wrist too far one way or the other, you can get a really good angle of attack. And again, if you need to bring your guitar up a little bit to do that, that's fine. And then your 2nd finger is going to go on the 2nd fret of the A string, or the 5th string right there. And you get it as close to behind the fret as you can. I know it's a little bit tough for this one, but make sure you're not muting any of the neighboring strings. Elbow in. See, watch what happens if my elbow's out. This 3rd finger automatically mutes the neighboring strings, right? So bring the elbow in a little bit, or just down. Right behind the frets, right on the very tips of your fingers. And that'll help you. Just go through that checklist, put the chord on, take it off. Same thing with the G chord. Put it on, take it off. Put it on, take it off. And that needs to be a practice point for you for a few days or a week or so. All right, the next critical little area of playing the guitar that'll frustrate so many guitar players is changing between guitar chords smoothly. And I have some tips to help you out with this. First off, the most important tip comes back around to our last little thing that we talked about, and that's making clean chords. You need to be able to go right to the individual chords on their own first before trying to switch between chords. If you can't go right to this E minor on its own, then you're going to have a really frustrating time trying to switch between that chord and the G chord. So you need to be able to go right to the individual chords on their own. Don't skip that step. Be able to go right to that G and right to that E on their own before trying to switch between them. The second tip I have for you when you're first starting to learn chords is to limit your options to only 2 chords at a time. Not 3, not 4, just 2 chords. That'll really simplify the challenge and let you focus in on it. So in this case, we're already doing that. We just have an E minor to a G major. So just keep that in mind as you learn new chords, just 2 at a time at first. The next thing is to just be aware of what chord is coming next. So if you're playing through a song and you're playing an E minor, be aware of the next chord that's coming up. In this case, it'll be a G, so be thinking about the way that next chord feels, think about the way it looks, and then make the change. The more aware you are of what chord is coming up, and the more ways you can recall it, the better chance you're gonna have at hitting it accurately. The last little tip I have for you here is to make sure to use common fingerings between chords if you can. And a good example of this is just an open E minor to a full G major. And if you don't know this chord right now, that's fine. You can learn it right now. Just the second finger on the second fret of the A string, and then the third finger on the third fret of the low E string. You're gonna have to implement all your clean chord tips here. Elbow in, very tips of your fingers, right behind the frets. But watch this, as I switch to an E minor chord, my middle finger stays on the same fret and the same string. And that's kind of my anchor or my guideline, just to make that switch a little bit easier. And it's gonna take a while to develop this, but look for common fingers when you're working on chord changes. All right, the last area of playing the guitar that I wanna get into in this video is just playing music, and I have a jam track for you for the Pink Floyd song, Wish You Were Here. And it's just the beginning part of it, the part that goes back and forth between an E minor and a G major. And it's gonna help implement everything you've learned about strumming, clean chords, changing between chords. And basically you're just playing 1, 2, 3, 4 on an E minor. So 4 beats or 1 measure of E minor, and then just switching to a G major chord for 1 measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, back to an E minor for 1 measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can play the whole G if you want to, full G. 2, 3, 4. And if you need to do just whole notes at first, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a G. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's fine. Now I have 2 jam tracks for you for this. It's gonna be really important that you implement all the clean chord changing technique tips that we went over. Just go through this at first on your own, at your own tempo, just switching between the E minor and the G. And then go through the jam track that's at a slower tempo, and we'll go through that right now. And then you can go over the jam track that's at the normal tempo of the song, or actually with a recording. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, E minor, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, E minor, 2, doing whole notes, 3, 4, 1. You can switch to quarter notes if you're ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So take this little video as a starting point or springboard to start getting into guitar the right way, and be sure to practice 20 to 30 minutes a day, at least 4 to 6 times per week. Now, if you want a more detailed kind of version of everything we've covered in this lesson, you can sign up for a free, very important series where you learn to play your first song just by clicking the link below. I'll see you later.